What if I told you that Max Verstappen, a four-time world champion, is suddenly back in the fight for the 2025 Formula One title? Just weeks ago, his season looked finished. Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris had McLaren flying high, and the championship seemed untouchable. But after stunning back-to-back wins in Monza and Baku, the entire landscape has shifted. Red Bull has roared back with a dramatic statement, and the pressure is now crushing McLaren. Will Verstappen complete one of the greatest comebacks in motorsport history? Or will McLaren's young stars hold their ground under fire? The answer could define the 2025 season, and fans are bracing for the storm. But then came Monza. On that legendary track, Red Bull introduced a new floor upgrade. For the first time in months, Verstappen had a direct say in how the car was set up. He chose the rear wing configuration himself, a decision that would prove decisive. Suddenly, the RB21 came alive. The Dutchman stormed to victory, and you could see it in his eyes. The fight wasn't over. That win was more than just points. It was a statement. Next came Baku, a circuit where everything seemed to fall perfectly into place. Armed with a new rear wing, renewed confidence, and a revitalized team behind him, Max Verstappen delivered another masterclass in dominance. 2 wins in 2 races, and just like that, the entire championship narrative flipped on its head. What looked like the fading decline of a champion suddenly became a nightmare scenario for McLaren. The transformation was nothing short of stunning. So what changed inside Red Bull to spark this turnaround? The answer lies in the arrival of Lauren Mekies, the newly appointed team principal. When he first stepped into the role, many assumed the squad was preparing for a long-term rebuilding phase. Instead, Mekies brought a wave of technical clarity and leadership that reshaped the culture almost overnight. Unlike his predecessors, he placed less emphasis on pure simulator data and shifted focus to what really mattered: the feedback of his drivers. He listened carefully to Verstappen, but just as importantly, he gave Yuki Tsunoda a voice as well. The results were immediate. For the first time in years, the entire garage seemed energized. Strategies aligned, upgrades made sense, and confidence began to return. Even Tsunoda started to shine under this new environment, securing his best-ever finish for Red Bull with P6 in Baku. That was no coincidence. It was living proof that the team had found fresh direction. And as for Verstappen, after his victory in Monza, he tapped the RB21 affectionately, almost as if to acknowledge that the car had been reborn into something he could finally trust again. Lauren Mekies summed up the team's revival perfectly when he said, "There is no silver bullet, but no one has ever given up on this season." Little by little, the work that Max and Yuki have been doing with the whole team has been paying off. That wasn't just optimism. It was a warning to every rival in the paddock. Red Bull was no longer on the back foot. The championship picture suddenly became fascinating. After Monza and Baku, Verstappen had cut the gap in the standings to just 69 points behind Oscar Piastri. 7 races remain, 3 sprint events, and 224 points are still on the table. The math is unforgiving. To win his 5th title, Verstappen needs to outscore Piastri by 10 points per weekend and outscore Norris by 6. On paper, it looks impossible. But this is Max Verstappen, a man who once won 19 out of 23 races in a single season. If anyone can make the impossible happen, it's him. Even Andrea Stella, the team principal of McLaren, admitted the threat when he said, "Red Bull is a very serious contender to win races and a very serious contender for the Drivers' Championship." Think about that. The team that once looked untouchable now openly fears the comeback of their greatest rival. For McLaren, the alarm bells aren't just ringing, they're deafening. The next critical battleground is Singapore, at the iconic Marina Bay Street Circuit. And here lies a cruel twist. Verstappen has never won in Singapore, not even during his most dominant seasons. The track's brutal combination of heat, tight corners, and unforgiving walls has always been his kryptonite. For McLaren, this is supposed to be home turf. Their car thrives in medium-speed corners, and everything about Singapore should favor them. If Piastri or Norris win in Singapore, the momentum could shift back in their favor. But if Verstappen finally conquers this circuit and claims victory, the entire championship landscape changes overnight. Lauren Mekies highlighted the stakes when he declared, "We take the challenge of Singapore. It's a track that's been challenging for the team for many years. If we can understand what doesn't work there anymore, we can take the next step. If Red Bull solves Singapore, the comeback becomes real." And that's exactly what terrifies McLaren. They already know what happens when Max Verstappen finds momentum. Once he starts rolling, stopping him becomes almost impossible. In Baku, Oscar Piastri's crash was more than just a bad result, it was a wake-up call. It reminded everyone that championships aren't simply about raw speed. They're about consistency, survival, and delivering under relentless pressure. One mistake, one lapse in focus, and everything can unravel. For Lando, Norris, and Piastri, that realization is suffocating. They can't afford DNFs. They can't afford strategic missteps. They can't even afford a weekend where the car feels average. Because when Verstappen is lurking in the mirrors, every weakness gets exposed. Every mistake costs double, and the margin for error has all but vanished. Imagine being Oscar Piastri right now. He's leading the championship, carrying the weight of expectation, but also living with the knowledge that one bad race could undo an entire season's work. It's not just a physical test anymore, it's psychological warfare. Every time he climbs into that car, he knows the man chasing him is Max Verstappen, a four-time champion who thrives in moments like these. And that, more than anything, makes the pressure unbearable. Meanwhile, Yuki Tsunoda has quietly become a critical piece of this unfolding drama. For the first time, he looks like a genuine supporting force inside Red Bull. His sixth-place finish in Baku wasn't just another result, it was a strategic masterstroke. He defended when it mattered, held ground under pressure, and gave Verstappen the room he needed to maximize his race. That kind of performance turns him from an outsider into a game-changer. If Tsunoda can replicate that role across the remaining races, stealing points away from McLaren, protecting his teammate on track, and keeping his composure under fire, then Red Bull will suddenly have a two-pronged attack. And for Tsunoda, this is more than just teamwork. This is an audition for his future. Deliver now, and his place in the team becomes secure. Fail, and questions about his long-term role will return instantly. To make this miracle comeback happen, Red Bull is prepared to gamble like never before. Tire choices, bold strategies, aggressive race day calls, everything is on the table. Because for Verstappen, there's nothing to lose. Nobody expects him to overturn a 69-point deficit with 7 races remaining. But if he does, he doesn't just win the title, he becomes a legend. And this mindset, racing with everything to gain and nothing to protect, makes him more dangerous than ever. Think about the what-ifs of the season. What if Verstappen hadn't crashed in Austria? What if his weekends at Silverstone and Hungary hadn't been so poor? Where would he be now? Without those setbacks, he might already be leading the championship. That's the fuel driving this comeback narrative. He isn't just chasing Piastri and Norris, he's chasing the version of the season he believes should already be his. For fans, this is a dream. Instead of another runaway title decided months before the finale, 2025 has become a three-way battle. McLaren versus Red Bull, Piastri versus Norris versus Verstappen. Every weekend now feels like a final. Every mistake could decide the title. The unpredictability, the tension, the stakes. It's everything fans crave from Formula One. Even neutral fans are rooting for chaos. Because nothing in motorsport is more thrilling than a comeback story. And if Max Verstappen manages to pull this off, it won't just be the greatest comeback of his career. It might go down as the greatest comeback in the history of the sport. So here we are, 7 races left, 3 sprint events, and 224 points still up for grabs. McLaren still leads, but Verstappen is charging fast. The RB21 has come alive, Lauren Mekies has ignited belief inside Red Bull, and the Dutchman himself looks more determined than ever. Will he do it? Can Verstappen rip this title away from Piastri and Norris in the final stretch? Or will the young stars of McLaren hold their nerve and deny him a 5th consecutive crown? The stage is set for a finale filled with tension, heartbreak, and possibly glory. No matter how it ends, the 2025 Formula One World Championship will be remembered as one of the most dramatic in history. So, what's your take? Can Max Verstappen pull off the impossible comeback? Or will McLaren stand firm and crown a new champion? The final races will decide everything, and the world is watching. One thing is certain, the story of 2025 is far from over. Thanks for watching.